Okay, Erev Tov, everyone. So a while back, somewhere before Pesach, we started discussing Haredi attitudes towards the state of Israel as a challenge for us to have to deal with and see what their claims are and how do we deal with what they raise. And the first one that we discussed was Satmar. And I have to say that Satmar is not so challenging in the sense that it's very extreme. It's so extreme that it's not so challenging. It's just a very strong disagreement. And if there's something about Satmar that might be challenging, it's that it quotes a source, as we saw in the Gemara, that speaks about places where Hashem has made Am Yisrael take an oath where they were swearing not to come as a group to Eretz Yisrael and so on. But we saw a few things about that. One of them is that this was not a rebellion against the nations. This was done with the agreement of the nations, whether it's the British Mandate or San Remo or the UN resolution in November 47. But the more important point was that this Gemara is not a halachic source. It's not quoted in any way in any halachic compilation. It's more of an agada than a halacha. And as I explained, the agada is about history. It's saying that for a long period of history, Am Yisrael was in a state where we don't have the strength to come as a nation to Eretz Yisrael and go against the will of the nations and so on. But I think there are clear signs that this history has changed. I don't want to get into the Shoah, even though this is the end of Yom HaShoah, but other signs of the strengthening of Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. And the Shoah is a more complex issue to discuss, and maybe we should do that, but a different time. In any case, I'd like to discuss two other Haredi opinions today. One of them I find somewhat challenging, and one of them less, but let's see what you guys say. And let's take a look. I'm going to share screen. Here we go. Okay. So this, for those of you who knew, Rav Shach, like every period, every couple of years, there is a Haredi rabbi from what is called the Lithuanian part of Haredi society, meaning not the Hasidic part of Haredi society. So there is usually a prominent rabbi who is considered to be the leading figure in the Torah world at the time. So when I was, when I was a young yeshiva bacher, this rabbinical figure was Rav Shach from Bnei Brak. And this is something that he said. Rav Shach says the following, same as last time. Oh, excuse me. It's recorded. Okay. So Rav Shach says, I'm going to read it in Hebrew and translate it. He says the following. Shema Tomar, if one would say, Anachnu le'om, we are a nation. Yesh lanu eretz, we have a land of our own. We have a state. Yesh lanu medina. Yesh lanu chayalim. Yesh lanu tzahal. We have soldiers in tzahal. We are strong. On Yom HaShoah, people very often, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors are soldiers, and they'll post the picture of them in uniform and in memory of their grandparents, great-grandparents, and this is your victory, and so on. So Rav Shach is saying, if this is what you feel, oh wow, this is great. We have a state, we have soldiers, we have tzahal, we're strong. Says Rav Shach, Ashiva lish'ol otcha, I will respond and ask you, Kama zman yesh lachem kol zot? How long have you had this? Well, the answer now is 75 years minus a week. But was there not a Jewish people before it? But you think that's what Judaism, as what being Jewish is about having a state, having an army? Are these the things that make us a Jewish nation, having a state and an army? That's not what makes us a Jewish nation. What makes us special, Torah, is the Torah that was given to us 3,000 years ago. So Rav Shach is saying, oh, look at you, Zionists, even religious Zionists, you think of Tzahal as a mitzvah, you celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut with a festive tefillah. You say that the state is something that is God blessed. You say on Shabbat in Beit Knesset you have a special prayer for the tefillah. And let me point out something. He doesn't say this, Rav Shach, but I'll add to what he's saying. People are, talking and not paying attention to the tefillah. But when it comes to the tefillah Lishlom Hamdina, everybody stands up and then suddenly everybody is quiet. Not everybody, but almost everybody. And tefillah Lishlom Chayalei Tzahal. Wow, people take this part seriously much more than other parts of the tefillah. So, really, come on. This is now you became Jewish because we have a Jewish state. Your tefillah becomes serious, and if we pray for Kiyum Mitzvot, if we pray for Beit HaMikdash, if we pray for everyone to keep Shabbat and Chag, so that doesn't make you feel that the tefillah is so special only when we pray for the state. That's what Judaism. The state is what created Judaism. So there's point number one that says Rav Shach. If anyone would like to respond or say, oh, I agree with him, please feel free to speak up.
Well, is he saying that we shouldn't? If there's a state that makes us more religious, is that a bad thing?
He believes
he's saying the state is what makes you religious, not kashrut and Shabbat and tefillah.
We don't need the state. We don't need the state, basically.
I'm saying that.
We don't need a state.
I'm saying that.
The state, the state doesn't make us more religious. The state allows us to practice our religion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was also saying, though, that some people have become more religious because of the existence of the state. They lost their religion during the Shoah, and they regained their religion during with the state.
I think that's true, but I don't see that Rav Shach is saying that. I think what he's saying is, look at you, you're so excited about these new things, state and an army. And you know what? He's not even saying a state and an army is positive or negative. Maybe it's positive. He's not saying like Satmar. He's not saying that, the state is forbidden. Coming back to Eretz Yisrael is forbidden. He's not saying that. He's just saying, what's the big deal? When you want to make a big deal about Judaism, it's about Torah. It's not about a state and an army. But look, you get excited over the state and the army, and you're not so excited about Torah. So where is the balance of your values? Why does this get you so excited? And real mitzvot, they don't get you so they don't give you such energy, some religious energy. What's going on?
There's no conflict between the two. Why is there a conflict between the two?
I don't think there's a conflict, but I don't think he's saying there's a conflict. But he's saying that that what's giving you energy, what makes you excited, what makes you happy, what makes you pray with fervor is what has to do with the state and the army, and what happened to all the and he's saying, I'm not even saying it's negative, but it's not the thing that's special about being a Jewish nation. What's special about us is the Torah that we've kept for thousands of years. That's what you should get excited about.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Of course, with that's what brings us. That's what defines us as Jews. That's what brings us together. That's the basis of commonality for all of us. But none of that is inconsistent with having a strong army and a state. And if we do not have the state, as we learned during the Shoah, we will have problems practicing our religion.
No, I don't think he's saying that anything.
I must be missing it.
Right now, I don't think he's saying anything specifically against the state. Wait a little bit, we'll see maybe something later. But right now, he's not saying that, but he's saying, look at what are the days where people are, I sat with students today, and the high school students, and they spoke about how singing Hatikva on Yom HaShoah is very moving. Young girls, 9th grade. And it was very moving for me to hear how they're moved by this. But I don't hear them saying, oh, singing Zmirot Shabbat or the Tfilah every day or on Shabbat or even on Yom Kippur. Oh, that's very moving. So he's saying there's a lack of balance here. Where is your focus? Why does the depth of thousands of years of Judaism not get you so moved? It's not so moving for you. But this thing about the state and the army, that's suddenly something that's so wow.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
So I think we're in danger of letting perfect be the enemy of good here. Everybody needs a way to get through that door and to find a way to get closer to Jewish values. If that way for some people is pride in a state that now has the ability to defend itself and defend its people, I'm okay with that. Eventually, maybe they will try out the shul. Maybe they will learn that a musical hallel is really cool, but it doesn't have to be immediately.
Okay.
I see that he's upset about the idea of a Jewish state, because he feels that a Jewish state, and that we are going about the Jewish state saying that we are strong. We did it again, Alinu Bahar. We did it on our own, and he doesn't like that. That's what bothers him. That's what bothers him, because he says, "Yesh lanu chayalim, yesh lanu tzahal, anachnu chazakim," and it bothers him that we didn't start out saying Baruch Hashem, Hashem natan lanu, azar lanu, v'chulei, 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 and that's what bothers him. Because
that may be hinted here.
One.
Okay. That may be hinted here. Doesn't say it explicitly, but you might kind of get that idea from the energies, from the kind of the way he's putting it here.
Yeah, that's what I see. That's what I see.
Okay.
It's a matter of you're newcomers, and who are you anyway? We've had the Torah for all this time, and here you are extolling just the virtues of tzava and the state. And what about that which has always represented Yahadut? And that's really his thing.
And what would you say, Ilana?
With respect to what?
In response to what he's saying, or would you agree, or do you want to disagree?
I certainly don't agree with him. But I think he just reveals his I want to say jealousy, but that's not really the exact word I'm looking for. But
Zealousy will be better.
No, I don't want to say that either. I think somebody needs to say yes and yes, it biyachad. And he's looking from one perspective, and he's looking at people who don't have that traditional set of values that he represents, essentially.
Okay. I would like to say, yeah, you want to say something further?
Yeah, I would like to add something. I think that even if you are religious or even not religious, but when you are religious and when you are insecure, you feel insecurity, you feel in a state or in an army where you can practice your Judaism, it's even easier for you. If you have to hide, if you are in a country where Jews and Judaism are not accepted, it's more difficult for you to practice. So it's even easier for a Jew, for religious people, to be in a state where he feels free to practice his Judaism, to follow the Torah, and it's even better to have this strong army, this state, to be able to do everything he wants, to be to live in the the religious way. So I
Okay.
think it's
Go
really
ahead, go ahead.
Maybe
Why
maybe we're the wrong audience, because we're Olim, right? So we've experienced what it is to live in a non-Jewish country, and we come to Israel voluntarily, and we celebrate that, and we see that we do get excited about the state, and people bring their religion with them. But for people who are born and have lived here all their lives, they don't have the Galut experience. It's a different experience.
I think
I think
certainly
maybe we're
they
the
don't have
wrong
the
audience.
experience, and that certainly underlines the difference. But I do think that even maybe not all Israelis, which is in a way which is sad, but I think that coming from religion and the idea of telling the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim and reliving it every year and so on has given us a medium of keeping to some extent, keeping some historical aspects alive. And 75 is, 75 years, and still having people who were part of the people who created the state, or the history is young enough that people are still very, people are still very enthusiastic about just the fact that we have a state and an army, because we know we've seen what it's like without it, and because we didn't have it, and it's young and new and so on. I mean, I will be worried a few hundred years down the road, but first let's get there, and then let's worry about it. But I would add something else. I think I identify with the feeling of that there is there is something missing in not being excited about Torah and mitzvot like we are excited about a state and an army. But I think there's also religious value to being excited about the state and the army in the sense that we will see in greater detail later on, not later on today, later on in our meetings in the future. But it's, the state of Israel is a sign of respect for Am Yisrael. And it's bringing the message of Am Yisrael to the world in a way that did not exist for so long, and it's making a statement about Am Yisrael being part of history and not being forgotten in history. It's a fulfillment of prophecies from thousands of years ago, and in these senses, it's not only for a religious person. It's not only that I'm also happy that there's a state, it's that I see in the state of religious significance, and in the army religious significance. And I think Avshach is missing that.
Right, he's not saying it.
If he was saying,
Right.
I would like people to be as excited about the state and the army as they are about Torah and mitzvot.
Exactly.
I would identify with that. If he's saying, be excited about Torah and mitzvot, a state and an army, they're you know what, they're not negative, but we need them. But what are you getting so excited about? And I'm thinking that there are reasons to be religiously excited about having a state and an army, and therefore I feel very different than him about this.
Excuse me, he says it's a merit kibbutzi b'malchut
We didn't get to
shamayim.
there yet. Well, I want to say, Tova, don't peek. We didn't
Don't
get
read,
there
I
yet,
have
but
to
you're right.
confront
You're right.
you.
We're going to get to that, but for the first paragraph for now.
Okay.
So let's
Hey,
move on.
can
to the
I,
second. You're right.
If
Yes.
we have just
Yes.
a personal comment. I remember many years ago, I don't think it was Yom HaShoah, but I was driving in the vicinity of Rehovot. And I remember seeing an Air Force jet coming in for a landing at the base nearby. And it just struck me. I don't know what the background was, but it just struck me. 80 years ago, if we had had just 2 of those planes, what a difference that would have made to our history.
Of course.
That struck me very profoundly. So yes, we can be proud of our army, and we can be proud of our state. Look what it has done for us, and look what it has done for us religiously, and as a community, and as a people.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay.
anyway, sorry to take more time.
No, it's fine. That's what we're here for. Okay, so let's look at the
Rabbi,
second
Ed had a
paragraph.
comment.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, if we can still applaud the Maccabees for what they did in defending Jewish people, why can't we applaud the soldiers?
Yeah,
Well,
you have to read Josephus. You have to read Josephus and see how not everybody applauded them.
You know what? My maiden name is Joseph. Okay, so.
But Etta, Rav Shach would ask you, who said we applaud the Maccabees? And if you say Chanukah, he'll say,
Exactly.
no, we applaud the miracle that Hashem did.
Yes, but
Exactly.
you know, there are vessels that are needed, and those vessels were the Maccabees. And so maybe the vessels to defend Israel and the right to do what we need to do are the Chayalim, and they are the tools that Hashem is using.
Okay, I give in as Shach's advocate, but beseder.
He's
But
looking,
were
he's
you
using,
advocating for him?
We're missing something. The thing that we're missing is these things are together. These things are intimately connected. You can't separate them. If you separate them, we have big problems.
Okay, good,
That's what I said about bringing them together.
good.
Well,
Okay, second, yeah, Eliezer, you want to say something?
I think this does relate to the text from the last time. I mean, if there's a divine reason for having the state of Israel, then what we're saying makes sense. If the state of Israel is perhaps against the divine design now, then what we're saying doesn't help.
Yes, you mean it's connecting to Satmar that we studied last time.
Right, yeah.
Okay, and it's also connecting, as Tova was saying before when she peeked forward, it's connecting to the second paragraph. So let's see it. And he continues, he says the following. Matzaveinu kayom matzav retzini biyoter. It's a very serious situation in a grave way, I think he's saying. Mitzad echad roim simanei torerut rabati. We see signs of awakening, Jewish awakening. Harbe rechokim mitkarvim veshavim eleinu. A lot of people who have been distant from Judaism are coming closer to Judaism and returning to us, to Torah, to mitzvot. He was saying this, and when did he pass away? In the 90s, Mashu Kazeh. And he's saying and since then it's become even stronger. Eineni yodea in kvar hayta ei pam tkufa kazot. I don't know if there was ever such a time. On the second hand, he says, mitzad sheni, we see a sight which is terrible and it's very upsetting. Mered kibbutzi b'malchut shamayim. Yesh avdel atzum says there's a great difference between an individual who sins, individually in his own private life, in his own private home, לבין ציבור המונים שהתארגנו לחיות באורח שיטתי חיים של חטא ועוון. The state, when there is a Jewish community that keeps Judaism, and there is a Jew, you know what, there are 2 of them, there are 10 of them, there are 100 of them, they don't keep Shabbat, they don't keep Kashrut, they don't keep mitzvot, then it's a certain number of individuals who are sinning. But when it's a group of Jews who got together as a community so that they would live systematically, be'orach shitati, a life of sin which is not according to Torah, that he calls a mered kibbutzi b'malchut shamayim, a group rebellion against the kingdom of God. So he's saying, thank you, a collective rebellion against the kingdom of Hashem, kingdom of God. And this is, so now he's not only saying the state of Israel is not as important as you're playing it up, saying there's something negative about it. And he's not, even now he's not the same as Satmar, because Satmar said, even if all the members of Knesset were religious, it would still be against the will of God. He's not saying that. He's saying if we collectively got together and kept mitzvot, okay, that's okay, or it's even positive. But when we get together and we create a Jewish community, the biggest Jewish community, a state, and systematically live against the Torah and systematically decide that this state does not have to keep the mitzvot of the Torah, this is a terrible thing. So this is an expression of something very negative about the state of Israel. even though I'm not Sadra. Again, what do you say? Maybe let's see the third paragraph and then put them together. Excuse me. וביותר קשה. הדבר כשיש בארץ ישראל שלטון עברי, there's a Jewish leadership, government. And you know what, if there's a group of Jews who get together under foreign rule, that's one thing, but we're getting together in a Jewish government and saying that we don't want to live according to Judaism. If an individual transgresses Shabbat, Mechalel Shabbat, Shalom, we think he has reasons, it's Parnasa, he fools himself, he thinks I can do it, I can't keep Shabbat, all kinds of things. But here's a country, the government has all the tools to create a state that will keep the mitzvot, and the Jews were free people, Yehudim Bnei Chorin, in our own state, במדינה משלנו, נשיא משלנו, we have our own state, our own government, with a government, with an army, it's all ours. It's one thing to say when we were under foreign rule, we couldn't keep all the mitzvot, similar to what Netanel was saying before. It was hard to, but here you have a government, you have a state, and who's stopping us from keeping Shabbat? Alev boche, alev koev. Our heart cries, our heart is in pain over this. So I'm putting the second and third paragraph together. So do you identify with his pain? Do you identify with his perspective? This is a collective rebellion, very negative.
Mark is making it clear what he thinks.
But at the end, I get the sense that he is for the state. He's just sad that the state is not religious.
But
that's what bothers him.
I would say he's more than sad. He's not Satmar. He's not against the fact that there's a state. If this was functioning properly religiously, he would be all for it.
Exactly. That's what he says.
But a state that is systematically designed not to be according to the Torah, that is not only neutral, that is negative.
Yes.
When we made Aliyah,
people,
I don't recall there being a question about whether we were observant.
What?
Well, Rav Shach asked you, you just didn't know he was asking you.
Yeah, I think if such a question had been asked, we would not have made Aliyah.
Right.
But I think that there is also another point. You don't have to be religious to follow the Jewish value. And there are a lot of people which are not religious, which are not following, which are not keeping Shabbat, which are not practicing a lot of mitzvot, but they behave with the Jewish values. And this is also something which is good and that we can do in the Jewish states. And this is also something that we can also bring to the world and to the other, because we are strong. So we can also bring these values, maybe without the religious part of it, but at least we have some common values, even if we are not religious or religious. So I think this is also important, and I disagree with what you said, because it's not only people who don't follow the mitzvot, we don't keep Shabbat. Maybe there are also some Jewish values which are the value of the Jewish people, and they just follow this, and it's also a good thing just to have this.
Harav Kook looked at it that way, but
we'll get to him.
That we will.
We'll get to him later. Anyone else?
Well, if it had been phrased as an idealistic outcome, that this is what the ideal would be, this is what we need to work towards, but we're not there yet, and so we have to work on it. It's a work in progress. If that's the way it would have been phrased, it would have been, I think, much more constructive.
No, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying that when you get a majority of Knesset, you should outlaw chametz in the public, and you should stop all public transportation on Shabbat, and I don't know what else. Who is this? This sounds like Rav Kook. I mean, that Rav Kook would have a different point. Was that you, Tova?
Yeah,
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, what you have been teaching us is that you can't force this on a country, and you have to hope that people learn and get to accept it. I think.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that I don't think that it's negative. The situation or the negative aspect of the situation that he's pointing to, I can agree that that's negative. It's a
Sure.
very problematic situation. I would say I would say a couple of things. First of all, there's a mix of lights and shadows, if you want to call it that, in the state of Israel. There are aspects. I don't take back what I said before. Having Jews being back in history and not on the sidelines of history, and not just being a nation that's being oppressed and chased from one exile to another, and et cetera, et cetera. Jews being in history, having an influence on the world, whether it's a moral or religious or even just scientific things, and just being a constructive, productive nation in the world is a very positive aspect. Even I would say a Kiddush Hashem, but at the same time, being sometimes very distant from religion. I agree with Netanel. There are positive values in the state of Israel that are connected to Judaism. At the same time, there are some very negative, lack of values in certain aspects. It's a very big mix. I can't say, the percentage one way or another. Is it 60-40 or 30-70, positive and negative? It's very difficult to say, but it's a very big mix. And part of the negative mix is being so distant from Judaism in the Jewish state. It is a problematic aspect. Again, what I think he's maybe similar to Netanel. What I think, I'm not disagreeing with some of what he's saying, but I think what he's overlooking is pointing to the complexity of the situation, not pointing to the positive aspects, the positive Jewish aspects of the state of Israel, at the same time saying there are very negative aspects. So it's a complex situation. You're also saying, okay, it's not good enough. Let's try and improve. How do we improve? It's not constructive. I think, Mark, you used that term. If, just pointing fingers and not saying, okay, let's get together, what can we do to improve the situation, is not constructive. Is he trying to protect his own group, his part of society, his tribe, as we say today? Is he trying to be influential in a constructive way? It's hard to say. Now, I wouldn't speak like this in public. If I could, I would present all aspects, including the complexity, including the negative aspects, but I would never only point to the negative aspects. I would put it this way, in the book of Joshua, Sefer Yoshua, there are two very distinct descriptions of the situation when Am Yisrael came to Eretz Yisrael after Yetziat Mitzrayim. There are very positive descriptions of what they achieved, and there are very negative descriptions of what they didn't achieve. As someone put it, and Bible criticism will say, oh, you see, there are two different authors, and there are two different sources. They're contradicting about what was the situation in the time of Joshua. And one of the rabbis said about this that it's like what's the job called in English? It's the Mevaker HaMedina, the
controller, the state controller, yeah.
In the sense of he has to be criticizing. Call it the state controller?
I think so.
The guy who writes books about what's wrong.
With a P, comptroller.
Comptroller. Okay. Yeah. So he has to, constantly be putting out these
Memorandums.
Yeah, doch, din v'cheshbon. How would you say din v'cheshbon?
Accounts.
Accounts, yeah. He puts out these accounts about, this is wrong, that's wrong, this needs to be improved, these people are criticized. It's a terrible job to have, to be the person who's in Hebrew, his job definition is you have to criticize everything. The truth is, in a state, it's very important to have someone who's criticizing, looking for things are being done wrong, and to make them better. But if the leader of the state, no matter who he is politically, on the Day of Independence, is going to get up and give a speech to the nation and point out all the negative aspects in the state, I think that's a very negative thing to do. On the Day of Independence, he should be pointing out all the good things. On a different time during the year, it's fine that he gives a message to the nation. These are things that we have to improve. So in the book of Joshua, it's not a contradiction. It's two different people, two different times, reflecting different aspects of the reality. So in that sense, I'm saying what Rav Shach is saying, I don't necessarily disagree with. I disagree with kind of projecting that this is the state of Israel and not pointing to the other positive aspects that are also just as much part of the reality and part of the religious reality and positive religious value of the state of Israel at any given moment.
I would identify more with the Satmar than with Rav Shach, because he's against the state of Israel as it is, but yet he's benefiting from the state of Israel as it is. He's benefiting from the army. He's benefiting from the income of non-religious high-tech workers and things like that. In other words, the Satmar at least is isolating itself, but he's taking advantage of exactly what he's criticizing.
He's taking, well, first of all, I agree with you in a sense. I'm not sure I agree with you with the final conclusion, the bottom line, that I agree with Satmar more than with him, but with your criticism of benefiting from the state while not pointing out the positive things that you're benefiting from, not being participant and not being grateful to the positive things that you're benefiting from. But I don't think that it's not that he's wrong, or that it's a wrong thing to do to point out to the things that he firmly disagrees with and is critical about.
So I don't have any problem at all with his point of view, and it reminds me of many things that we read in the Torah where Moses tells the people, you've got this book, it's got all of these rules and mitzvot that you're supposed to follow. If you follow them, all these wonderful things will happen. But oh, by the way, you won't. And now this is going to happen. And that's the rest of Jewish history. And here we are. So the question has always been, I think, you can't coerce people to follow every rule. They just won't do it. People they're not hardwired that way. So how do we get the best outcome with the least damage? And that's kind of what politics is all about. And you've got a state. It is politics.
I was struck by in that last paragraph, like hearing in the background the news broadcasts of Demokratia. I was struck by the reaction that a large segment of the Israeli population would have to that statement, that the lack of democracy, the lack of free choice. Because ultimately, each and every one of us is free to decide how we will run our lives. Mm-hmm. And there was something about that paragraph that just struck me like, wait a minute, there are all different kinds of Jews.
Yeah, but it's one thing to be inclusive. It's one thing to respect people. It's another thing to agree with them and to say, well, I accept that are in the long run, I totally accept without any comment, without any criticism, that there are all kinds of Jews, and the state is not taking a stand on what the Jewish state should be like. I would like the state to say, I wouldn't want it to come from politics, because I don't think that's where it should come from, and I think it's going to be much more damaging, much more destructive than constructive. But I would be happy if it was possible for the state to say, this is the way the state is going to run. It's going to be more Jewish than it is. By the way, it is partially Jewish. It does have the days off from work on Jewish festivals, and the school year is structured around the Jewish calendar and so on, and Shabbat. But I would be happier if the state said the state will be handled in a more Jewish way without interfering in individuals, whether they want to keep Shabbat or not, and so on.
Exactly.
Which still leaves me with more identification with what he's saying than maybe some other people, in the sense that, it pains me. Yes, I agree with, I take the last words, halev boche, halev koev.
Yeah.
I identify with that. There is something very, very painful about the distance from Judaism, not only of individuals, but of the society and of the way parts of the country are run. But it's partial. It's complex. It's not one-sided. It's not black and white.
But then nothing is black and white.
I agree.
And I think we discussed that in a previous meeting, but we talked about the status quo. And I think this status quo is also a good thing, because everyone is okay to say we are in a Jewish state, should follow the value of the Torah, of the Jewish state, but not force the people to be religious. And I think when you want to force someone to do something, you will do the contrary. And even if it was agreed to keep this kind of status quo, because you want to force him, he will say, okay, I don't want this and I don't want this, and will reject everything at the end.
Right. I totally agree with you. Although, as I said, I don't support total separation of religion and state, because I don't think that's going to be constructive either. But what I would love to see, although maybe, to quote John Lennon, you may say I'm a dreamer, but what I would really like to see is not a status quo, but a national agreement, a national compromise of sorts, something similar to what, I don't know where it stands now, but what they're trying to do, hopefully at the president, in terms of negotiations, of creating even a legal system in the state of Israel, legislated by the Knesset, but not by coalition overriding opposition, but by reaching agreement and compromise, meaning let's put in more Judaism as much as possible, and without interfering in individual lives, let's put in more Judaism in the state-wide expressions, and at the same time enable them to be more diverse and enable people who don't call themselves religious, who don't define themselves as religious, to be participant in defining what kind of Jewish expression will be in the state. And I think that will, it'll let out a very strong energy, negative energy of being forceful and coercive and fighting about things. It will let go of all that, and people will be able to be more. I'll put it this way, and this is very political. The minister of Sala Moreshet, the minister of
Heritage.
Yeah, it's a new position.
Yeah.
Of Amichai Eliyahu, who he and I are don't drink the same cup of tea, but I want to be respectful and disagreeing and being respectful. The previous minister of culture in the previous government, Chili Troper, who I think I can enjoy tea more with him. who's a young religious person who one of the things he did as the minister of culture was to instate this idea of having Jewish heritage sites open on Shabbat,
Right.
open free on Shabbat,
Free.
so that people who want to express their Judaism on Shabbat in a totally non-halachic way, they're going to drive there with their family on Shabbat. But instead of driving somewhere and watching a comedy and doing something with does not have any spiritual value and not any Jewish value, they're going to drive on Shabbat and come to some kind of site of Jewish history, of Jewish heritage, and so on. So he's saying, I accept that people are not keeping Shabbat, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that their choice has to be either keep Shabbat and be traditionally Jewish, or don't keep Shabbat and disconnect with all tradition. You cannot keep Shabbat and at the same time connect to certain aspects of Jewish tradition. The present minister of heritage is, they claim that he was stopping the funding for this. He denied that, but he's not interested in that. He said that I'm not against it, but that's not my agenda. My agenda is to have a special program for people to start coming to shul on Friday night. Shabbat must be traditional Shabbat. And if you understand the disagreement here, what Rav Amichai Eliyahu is saying is that I want to bring people closer to Judaism as I understand it. I understand I can't coerce everyone to be religious next year, but I want to strengthen, I want to give funding to a program which will be attractive to get people to come to prayers in synagogue on Friday night, which is part of what we call in Israel, Masortiim, meaning people who were not identified with one movement, a formal movement or another, but kept part of the tradition, but were not committed to halacha. And very often, this is what they would do. They would come to shul on Friday night. They would go home, make kiddush, probably make kiddush and not say Birkat Hamazon. They would make kiddush and then turn on the TV and go to kaduregel on Shabbat morning. But they were more connected than a lot of people in the generation today. And so this is a Rav Eliyahu. And Chili Tropel is saying that's fine. I have nothing against that. You're going to get certain people for that. But there are other people who are not going to come to your prayers on Friday night, and they're going to disconnect from Judaism. And I would like to give them something that will be a connection to Judaism, which is not the same as your religious connection. And Amichai Eliyahu is saying to Chili Tropel, I'm not excited about that because you're not connecting them to Judaism. You're connecting them to something which is just call it, what would the term be? It's fluffy. It's I'm looking for a word. It's
chiloni. The bottom line is it's chiloni.
It's what's the word for
tradition?
Sorry? What?
Tradition.
Historical attachment.
Tradition.
No. I'm looking for a word and it'll come to me at some point.
Tradition.
She's singing to us.
Understand, but that's what I'm looking for. What he's saying
It's a different perspective.
Okay, I found the word. It's folklore. It's kind of this is the folklore of the Jewish people. Big deal. It's not important. What's important is religion, not folklore. And the Chili Tropel is saying, no, that's not true. If they're connected to Jewish history, the Jewish heritage in a non-halachic way, that does have value. And for some people, that will be their connection to Judaism, and you're not supporting that. So I hear the argument. I can understand both points of view. I identify with Tropel more than with Eliyahu, but I can understand the argument about it.
Rabbi, are they skipping a step?
Sorry?
Are they skipping a step? It seems to me that if either way, if you've got people that are so detached that you need to attract them to either going to Jewish sites and learning Jewish history or going to, Friday night services, you've got people that just have a big gap in their knowledge and in the way that their heart can attach to Judaism. I think you've got to have the educational aspect at a much younger age to where they'll even want to do those things.
But even so, even if you don't have the educational aspect, in many branches of Judaism, Chabad included, spend a lot of time and thought in figuring out how to attract people, whether it's to attract people to Friday night by having a Friday night dinner after the service, a group dinner. Even you'll forgive me, Tzvi, but the Karlbach Shul in Manhattan used to do that. Now, yes, it was Manhattan, but the point is that almost every stream of Judaism attempts in one way or another, that's where the notion of Kiddush Club came from, et cetera, to keep people coming. And whether it's with lectures, whether it's with kiddushes, whether it's with dinners, or all of the above, it is what people deemed a way to create community in a Jewish environment, and that's it. It's not limited to any one stream.
Okay, that's also positive, but I think what Tropel is pointing out in his attitude is that there are people that I'm going to invite them to a Friday night dinner. They're so estranged today. They're not only estranged in being distant, they're estranged in a positive negative energy, if I can use that express it that way, in the sense that they're against something. They've been so in Hebrew we say Hashem sritot. They've been so scarred.
Scarred.
They've been so scarred by all kinds of things that they interpret as being coercive and being forceful and so on, that when you invite them to a Friday night meal, all their protections, how do you say, haganot, all their negative feelers,
defense mechanism.
all their defensiveness sprouts right up and is against it. But if you tell them on Shabbat you can come visit a site of Jewish history, that they're open to. So if you come to their school, for instance, Michael, with Judaism, I know parents on both sides with something Jewish, they're going to be up in arms against it. And there are other parents in the same school who are not religious and whose children are there who are upset because they want their children to get some Jewish content, but God forbid it shouldn't be something that's going to turn them to pull them closer to religion, but they want them to know and to have some affiliation with their Jewishness. But there are people who, you bring it to their schools, you bring it to the educational system. Listen, I was once for 1 year, it didn't work. It wasn't a successful program, or maybe I didn't succeed, whatever it was. For 1 year, I went to a non-religious high school in Kfar Saba to try and teach Judaism. The minister of education happened to be the head of the Mafdal at the time, Zvulun Hamel. It had nothing to do with that. It was something private. It had to do, if anyone here, those of us who remember Rabbi Pinchas Heyman, it had to do with things that he was trying to do. But there was one student in one of my classes who was so upset that they brought me to teach Judaism in the school because she was sure that this was the religious minister of education that was pushing religion on her. She was so upset about it that they let her not take the class. So I could work with the class, but she was allowed not to participate in the class. And there's a sense of me that says, you know what? You're not right. It wasn't Zvulun Hamel sending me. And no, I was not coming to turn you to try and make you become religious. Yes, I was coming to try and strengthen your Jewish identity, but maybe it was a mistake to bring me with my kippah and tzitzit, and maybe they should have brought someone non-religious with a strong Jewish connection to teach Judaism in a more open way. Or maybe I could have expressed it in a more open and a way that's more free and not with my attitude, whatever it is. My son-in-law, Ariel, he is also an educator in a religious school, and he is also one of the leaders of the Tanakh studying in a non-religious school, and he's able to bring, a Jewish message there.
Nice.
Some of his students are religious in the non-religious school, some are not, but he leaves a positive impression there. So it's just not simple. It's not simple to do it. And part of what Topper is saying, there are people who need that. And the truth is, they're both right. There are people who will come to shul if we find a way to bring them, including Ilana making a Friday night dinner. And there are people who will not come to shul no matter what we do because they feel that we're being we're too pushy. But if we allow them to visit a site on Shabbat that is of Jewish history and Jewish heritage, they're happy to do that. So maybe we have to try in many different ways and directions. Maybe we should make a coalition of this government and the previous government. Oh yeah, good luck. Okay.
I
Yes,
the
go
earlier
ahead.
allusion. Sorry, I find you mentioned a distaste for folklore, but I think that's really ironic because so many times in these discussions we've been impressed about how Torah tells stories, and that's folklore. To say that folklore is trivial or besides the point is ridiculous.
Okay, first I'll say two things. First of all, thank you. I listened to what you're saying. Second, I think what I meant was that I wasn't expressing my opinion. I was saying what Amichai Eliyahu would say.
I know.
He would say it's just folklore. It's not important. I want them to be connected to religion. But the honest truth is that I value it less than actions that are parts of the Torah and the halacha and studying Torah and studying Judaism and so on. But I don't think they're void of value. I don't think that it's not worthwhile to make an effort for people to have that kind of folklore, although I would like it to be more than that, in a sense that, for instance, there would be things that I would support that I don't agree with. For instance, if someone wanted to have a tefillah with music on Shabbat, I wouldn't participate. But I would say that we should encourage it, not only not discourage it. At this point in our history, we should encourage it because it's going to connect them, rather than being totally disconnected. Although I won't participate myself. Or if I think of the Kotel, so I would be at least supportive of having what's called a Kotel Israeli or a Rachavat Israel, Ezrat Israel, where people can have mixed davening, mixed prayers, and a conservative family from the US can come and have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for their child there without the constrictions of where the prayers are at the Kotel now. I would be supportive of it, whereas Amichai Eliyahu's attitude is, no, that's desecrating our Judaism. We know what Torah is, we know what Judaism is about, and that's desecrating it. And I'm saying to him, you know what, maybe I'm closer to your opinion than I am to theirs in the sense of what Torah should be like. But when you're telling them not to do it, you're telling them, get out of here. I don't want you to be connected here. And I'd rather have them connected in a way that I disagree with than have them disconnected, totally disconnected. That's what I'm trying to say also about folklore. I think that there are things that are more important than folklore, but if for some people, folklore is what connects them, it's worthwhile.
Right.
If I were the minister, I'd give it funding. I will vote for the minister that will give it funding. So I wanted tonight to discuss Rav Shach and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Let me quickly skim down right here to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. But it's too late, so he'll be waiting for us in 3 weeks. Next week is Yom Ha'atzmaut, Tuesday night, so we won't have the Hebrew Shiur. In 2 weeks, we'll have the Hebrew Shiur. Hopefully, in 3 weeks, we will again have meet on this, and we will become. This is Jailani. You said Chabad, so look what I did. I prepared Chabad. This is.
love.
And
Thank you.
And he is again. If we had Satmar and we had a Rav Shach, we're going to continue moving on a scale. We're going to come even closer, and yet the Lubavitcher Rebbe will still not be Tzionid Dati about the state of Israel, and we will have to deal with what the points that he's going to make.
Yeah.
For next time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Ilana, did
wonderful.
you get my message?
I didn't
Ilana?